Okay, you may start.
So I would like to call this meeting in order. Welcome to the 16th meeting of the Standing Committee on the Status of Women, pursuant to Standing Order 108, Section 2, and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February the 1st. The committee will commence its study to resource development and violence against Indigenous women and girls. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room are remotely using the Zoom application. Per the Director of the Board of Internal Economy on March 10th, 2022, all those attending in person must wear a mask, except for members who are at their place during the proceeding. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to state a few rules for the witnesses and members. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are participating by video conference, click the microphone icon to activate your mic. Please put your mic on mute when you are not speaking. For the interpretation, if you are participating in the meeting by Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen or either Flora or English or French. If you're participating in person, you can use the headset provided and select the channel you want. I will remind the members and witnesses that all their comments must be addressed to the chair. Just so that witnesses are aware, we may need to, if anything, comes and that we will seek unanimous consent if there's any pause or anything, is there. So now I want to welcome our witnesses to today's panel. We have as an individual, we have Pamela Padmer, Chair in Indigenous Governance at Ryerson University, now to be known as a Toronto Metropolitan University. Kathleen Quinn, Executive Director of the Center for End All Sexual Exploitation. Vivian Dore Naidu, Director of Concert Action, Femme Astri. And from the Quebec Native Woman Inc., we have Marjorie Iton, President, the Stephanie Serval, Gote Legal and Policy Analyst. We'll begin with opening remarks. You will each be provided with 5 minutes for your opening remarks. When you see me hold the red folder, that means you have 1 minute. And then please begin to wrap in. Now I'm going to turn the floor over to Pamela Palmater. Go ahead, Pamela. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Quainin Deluisi Pam Palmater. I'm from the Sovereign Mi'kmaq Nation and unceded Mi'kma'ki, and my home community is Ugbaganjik Eel River Bar First Nation. But today I'm coming to you from the sovereign territories of the Mississaugas of Scugog. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this important study on the relationship between resource development and violence against Indigenous women and girls. This is something that I've worked on for quite a long time, not just for the National Inquiry, but also for international human rights. I think it's appropriate to start with the fact that several years ago, KWG Resources Incorporated, a Canadian mining company, posted a video online of women in bikinis to promote mining on Indigenous lands in the Ring of Fire. Then President Frank Swank defended the video, saying that sex sells mining. This goes to show just one of many examples that mining is not just about exploiting minerals on Indigenous lands, but also the exploitation of local Indigenous women and girls as well. Sadly, this is consistent with research and statistics on Canadian extractive companies in particular. In 2009, a secret report commissioned by the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada confirmed that Canadian mining corporations are the worst human rights violators globally, not just here in Canada, but all around the world, and that they are far more likely to engage in unlawful activities and grave human rights violations, despite the fact that they all have corporate social responsibility policies. And it's not just limited to mining, obviously it's other extractive industries. We know that high-risk projects include resource development, but also the extractive industry and transnational corporations specifically, energy projects like hydro and nuclear, and mega projects that include major construction and decommissioning projects, highways, airports, bridges, roads, and tunnels. And the high-risk areas within those projects do include man camps, but also the high influx of temporary or transient workers that are predominantly male, and also the trucking industry, the transportation industry, private security, and sadly also law enforcement. The types of violence that Indigenous women and girls are subjected to by all of those players are increased rates of physical violence, including but not limited to domestic violence, high rates of sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, sexual assaults and rapes, and increased rates of disappearances. This is in addition to the failure of all of those parties just mentioned to not respect the Aboriginal title of Indigenous women and girls, their Aboriginal and treaty rights, their rights to self-determination, which includes an equal voice in decision-making, and the right to have free, prior, and informed consent, basically the right to say no to violence. Canada, as a state, has failed to protect the rights of Indigenous women and girls by not preventing the racism, sexism, misogyny, and sexualized violence by state actors like the law enforcement and in particular the RCMP, from private actors like human sex traffickers, and corporate actors like those engaged in man camps, private security, and especially the trucking industry. Failure to address all of these things have led to severe rates of sexualized violence. But it's also important to note that Canada, as a state, has responsibility to uphold the human rights of these women, regardless of what their constitutional makeup is. So it is not a defense in international law to say, well, the provinces are responsible for this and we're responsible for that. Canada as a state is responsible for all of it, and their continued failures hurts Indigenous women and girls directly. Everything from this PDAC report to the FBI reports, Amnesty International, the Inter-American Commission, the United Nations have all concluded that Indigenous women and girls face high rates of sexualized violence, criminalization, surveillance by both state, private, and corporate actors. The solutions, we need a public inquiry into the relationship between all of these resource extractive and mega projects by state actors, corporate and private actors. We need to respect the right of Indigenous women and girls and their nations to say no to projects. We should heed the UN CERD calls to halt all mega projects until there's free, prior, and informed consent. And we must give reparations to those who've been harmed and ensure that Indigenous women are key decision makers moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palmater. And now we are going to Vivian Doré Nadeau. You have 5 minutes.
Bonjour. Au nom de Concert Action.
Hello. On behalf of Concert Action Femmes Estrie, I would like to thank the Standing Committee on the Status of Women of the House of Commons of Canada for inviting us to participate in its study on resource exploitation and violence against Indigenous women and girls. As we do at Concert Action Femmes Estrie meetings, I would like to acknowledge that our offices are located on the traditional and unceded territories of First Peoples. I pay tribute to their presence and their role as stewards of the lands and waters where each of us stands today. As a feminist organization focused on social and environmental justice, we see it as essential to acknowledge the past and present consequences of colonialism and to support Indigenous resistance on these lands. As I speak, I pledge that these words and intentions will live with me. Since Concert Action Femmes Estrie is not an Indigenous organization, it will be difficult for me to give a first-hand account of the impact of extractivist violence on Indigenous women and girls. I will try to make good use of the privilege we have to speak today. Concert Action Femmes Estrie is a consultation table made up of 30 member groups, some 30 member groups. Its mission is the collective defense of women's rights. It coordinates the World March of Women Committee in the Eastern Townships, which participates in the Quebec coordination of this international organization. Our World March has developed solidarity with Indigenous women, specifically those from Macronorte, Peru who are also involved in the World March of Women. It was during the 2015 actions influenced by the culture of the Indigenous women of the South under the slogan "Protect our lands, our bodies, and our territories" that the World March of Women Eastern Townships committee became interested in the issue of Canadian mining. The Indigenous women reminded us that we belong to the land and that the land does not belong to us. Furthermore, they mentioned that colonialist and patriarchal systems exploit Mother Earth as they exploit women's bodies. When we talk about resource exploitation and violence against women and girls, we need to understand that there are two different cultures and different systems of oppression are at play. First, the current government and mining company practices perpetuate colonialism. This prevents them from living on their land. 66% of world's mining is done by companies based in Canada. Furthermore, Indigenous people have lived here for over 10,000 years, and when the Europeans arrived, the land and water were untouched. Already, after 600 years of living on this land, we have polluted all the waterways, destroyed forests, and ripped up the land. This, too, is a form of violence. When we talk about violence against Indigenous girls and women, another system of oppression comes into play, that of the patriarchy, which leads to violence against women. A 2021 study by Inuit Women of Canada found that more than half of the women surveyed had experienced repeated sexual abuse and harassment in the workplace, primarily sexist comments, touching on psychological abuse, at 5 different mine sites. One woman said she was fired after reporting the problem to her company, while another was told to keep quiet. In addition, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report points to violence around worker camps at resource sites. A 2017 report by the research group Firelight states that in the Fort St. James area, sexual assaults increased by 38% in the first year after the camp was built. Last Monday, the World March of Women, Estri, organized a meeting with Indigenous women from Peru and Argentina. In Peru, a Canadian mining company appropriated more than 90% of the Indigenous lands, leaving only their school, health center, and place of worship. When the community opposed this takeover, they were subjected to violent repression. Some people have suffered permanent damage, such as loss of sight, paralysis, etc. In Argentina, activists have been imprisoned as a result of their resistance to the establishment of this mine. In order to improve this situation, we ask, among other things, that the education system talk to children about equality between women and men, demonstrate to children and youth that violence is unacceptable, and teach them to build nonviolent and caring relationships. That companies must have an enforced policy against psychological and sexual harassment of women, that Indigenous women workers be informed of their right to recourse in cases of psychological and sexual abuse, that Canada strengthen the resources and powers of the Ombudsman with respect to Canadian mining companies with the power to sanction, that a law be passed in Canada on human rights and environmental due diligence, that a law to prevent programmed obsolescence be put into practice, and that the activists in prison in Argentina be released. I would like to thank you very much.
That is your time. Thank you, Madam Doranado. Now, we will now hear from Kathleen Quinn. Go ahead for 5 minutes.
Good day, bonjour, and thank you for this opportunity. I am calling in from the traditional territories of Treaty 6 First Nations and Métis Zone 4. I've served as Executive Director of CEASE, Center to End All Sexual Exploitation, for 25 years. I speak from the experience of a community-based organization responding to commercial sexual exploitation, sex trafficking, and violence against girls and women, many of whom are Indigenous. Edmonton is known as a gateway to the North, and the North is known for resource extractive industries, including oil, gas, and coal. There is also significant logging industry, often adjacent to these resource extraction industries. All of these industries impact every aspect of life on First Nations and Métis communities. While these communities strive to create positive socioeconomic outcomes by engaging with the resource development committees, there are negative impacts. I will focus my comments on migration from communities near resource development industries and the violence Indigenous girls and women face when they leave for towns and cities. A key vulnerability factor is transportation. There are many communities where there's no or very limited access to buses. Hitching a ride puts youth and women at risk of male drivers who may demand sexual services in exchange. When they're dropped off in a nearby town or city, they encounter more risks. Over 70% of Edmonton's Indigenous population originate from other communities. The 2016 census identifies that Indigenous people comprise 5.5% of the population. The Indigenous population of central Edmonton neighborhoods where I live range from 10 to 17.5%. These neighborhoods are often where Indigenous youth and adults migrate first and where they are preyed upon by sex trade exploiters, traffickers, gangs, and drug trade profiteers. While industry camps are able to establish codes of conduct for workers and contractors on site, there is little control when they leave the camps and travel to nearby towns and cities. This demand by males for access to female bodies fuels the sex trade, especially when women have few economic options. Where there is a demand, there are also those who see a business opportunity to traffic in human beings. At least 44 sexually exploited women, including transgender and two-spirit persons, were murdered in Edmonton in the past 39 years. Many were last seen in our central Edmonton communities. Then their bodies were found outside the city. Over 52% were identified as Indigenous, which shows the overrepresentation of Indigenous girls and women exploited through sexual violence and the sex trade. Only 11 of these murders have been solved. For those who survive, they endure the harsh reality of long-term physical and mental impact of sexual violence. When compounded with poverty, precarious housing, racism, and intergenerational trauma, many Indigenous girls and women live the majority of their lives in these conditions of vulnerability. This needs to change. In conclusion, resource industries must continue to work with Indigenous and Métis communities on community plans to decrease violence and sexual exploitation and increase safety and well-being for Indigenous girls and women. They can expand their codes of conduct for workers and contractors to include training on sexual violence, commercial sexual exploitation, and human trafficking, such as Enbridge is doing on May 4th for all their North American operations. They can fund community safety initiatives, employment training, bursaries, and financial literacy programs, both on First Nations and Métis communities and in towns and cities. They can develop wellness programs for the male workforce and focus on positive masculinity, healthy relationships, and healthy coping strategies to deal with the unusual workplace stressors required in the resource industry. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Finally, we will hear from the representative for the Quebec Native Women, Inc. You have 5 minutes.
Oui, bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Hello, Madam Chair. I just want to take a moment to let you know that I will have to leave at 2:15 because I have an event at the United Nations, so my colleague will be able to finish the meeting with you, Stéphanie Sirois-Gauthier. So firstly, I would like to thank the members of this committee for giving Quebec Native Women, Inc. the opportunity to express itself on the worrying issues of violence in all its forms experienced by Indigenous women and girls in Quebec. For 48 years, QNW has been working to restore the balance between Indigenous women and men, whether they are Indigenous or non-Indigenous, by giving a strong voice to the needs of priorities of women. The promotion of non-violence has been an important issue for QNW since its creation. In this sense, our organization thanks the Standing Committee on the Status of Women for listening to QNW's priorities in terms of violence related to resource exploitation. There is no need to mention that Indigenous women and girls are disproportionately victims of violence in all its forms: physical, psychological, sexual, but also cultural mental, spiritual, social, institutional, financial, and others. This violence is present in communities and in urban settings. Indigenous women and girls deserve and must be safe from the scourge of violence in all its forms, which has been an additional burden during the pandemic. This violence is the result of all forms of colonial policies that were and are aimed at assimilating Indigenous people, especially Indigenous women. The National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls mentions that resource exploitation is at the basis of colonization policies. The objective was to develop international trade based on resources and territory that had never been granted to the various Indigenous communities that occupied it without consent or agreement. The National Inquiry denounces that Indigenous women and girls are 12 times more likely to be murdered, especially because they are marginalized people. The discriminatory, patriarchal, and assimilative colonial policies and the establishment of residential schools are convincing examples that have and still have a heavy and permanent intergenerational impact. It is a slow but enormously devastating genocide. I don't need to tell you how bad it has been in the communities and for Indigenous women. Without minimizing the violence experienced by women in general, the statistics are very clear that Indigenous women are far more affected than their non-Indigenous counterparts. On the one hand, the National Inquiry's call to action 13.1 to 13.5 make explicit reference to resource development and impact on Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. In general, the calls to action call for the safety and protection of Indigenous women to be considered in the development of extractive and mining projects. To do so, they must be involved in the processes before, during, and after implementation. As well, projects must undergo socioeconomic impact assessments. Governments are also asked to fund research projects in this area, and the industries involved to expand and strengthen existing social infrastructure to enable greater service delivery. Our organization questions the real implementation of these calls to action, considering that we are here today to talk about the violence experienced by Indigenous women and girls in a context of resource exploitation. Is the project analysis process comprehensive and multifactorial? What are the criteria for implementing or not implementing a project? Do Indigenous people, experts, and representative Indigenous organizations sit on, and are they represented on the various committees? What about the ongoing monitoring provided for in the call to action 13.2? Indeed, all of these questions lead to the same question. Does the implementation of development projects really comply with the safety, protection, and well-being of Indigenous women and girls? Moreover, these calls to action also refer to the right to free, prior, and informed consent as guaranteed by Sections 18, 19, and 31 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and Canadian constitutional law. It is clear that the principle of honour of the Crown is not being adequately respected. On the other hand, our organization is concerned about the fact that under the National Inquiry's Call to Action 13.5, governments are supposed to fund more research projects to document the problem. Among others, the Inuit Women's Association of Canada published a very relevant study in March 2021. It denounced that Inuit women who work in resource extraction industries experience events such as unwanted touching, emotional abuse, sexual comments, sexual harassment, violence, etc. The question remains, what other recent studies are out there that point to the problem? Are there any current studies that deal with violence that occurs outside of work sites? The answer that our organization would have to give is that too few studies are carried out for women to be heard. In recent years, Indigenous women have become more present in the work sites, but it has been previously recognized.
That's it, your time. You can add more points in your answers. So thank you. With that, thank you all of our witnesses for your testimony. We are all now going to start off our rounds of questions. So the first round, we will have Ms. Dominique Nguyen. You have 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank all of the witnesses for your presentations. My first question is for Ms. Pamela Palmater. Ms. Palmater, you mentioned that Canada has failed to protect Indigenous women. What has the government failed to do, and what should the government have done?
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's an important one. Throughout our history, Canada has failed to respect the basic human rights of Indigenous women and girls. You can see that in how Indigenous women and girls were treated, the theft of children into residential schools, forced sterilization, scalping bounties, the institutionalization of women, of course, and also throughout the Indian Act, which treated Indigenous women as not Indian enough to belong to their communities, which set them outside of their communities and put them at risk. So there's a long history of law and policy in that regard, but then there's also what's happening today. So the continued forced foster care situation, theft of women, the sexual assaults by state actors like the RCMP, like police, like doctors and nurses.
And thank you, Ms. Palmater, because I don't have a lot of time. In this case, in the case of violence against Indigenous women in the context of economic development and resource extraction, how do you see the matter? I believe that it is a shared responsibility. Last week, I was saying, and the chief of police, you mentioned the RCMP, community leaders, companies, company owners, everyone should be concerned by this situation. How can we start? Should we put all of these people around the same table? The other witnesses mentioned this as well. How can we start this process? Because we can't stop economic development. We can do better. How can we do better?
Okay, thank you. And in fact, I think the starting premise is we can stop certain projects. The presumption that all projects must go through in all situations, no matter what the human cost is how we got into this. So some projects are simply not safe for the environment or Indigenous peoples. Both the federal government has significant financial and political levers through in its relationships with the provinces and territories. They have the ability to make it conditional that any federal approvals, any federal support, any federal money is conditional on a guarantee of prevention of violence against Indigenous women and girls in all of its form, and also to purposefully investigate, prosecute, and root out all of the RCMP sex offenders, all of the man camp sex offenders, all of the corporate sex offenders, doing these things both in Canada and around the world. We shouldn't be talking about Canadian mining companies that are engaged in gang rapes. And that's what's happening both here in Canada, the United States, and around the world. And Canada has the legal obligation to stop that, and it has the tools to do that.
Madame, merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Ms. Palmater. Ms. Etienne, you talked about federal research projects. Do you believe that our knowledge of these situations, well, we have a lot of data on resource extraction and violence against women. Do we have data on this currently? Answer: as I mentioned, there is very little documentation on Indigenous women and resource exploitation. I think women have a role to play in resource development. For example, hunting. It's still something that is mostly done by men. But for women, they might collect medicinal plants and fruits, and we should be a part of resource exploitation. Another example, in forestry or in another industry, we are extracting plants. And this is harmful to or detrimental to the growth, but that is why we need to fund research on those fields. Thank you, Ms. Etienne. Last question for Ms. Quinn. Ms. Quinn.
This is the time.
I'll come back to it later if I have time.
Now we go to Ms. Lambropoulos for another 6 minutes. Please go ahead, Emanuela.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to begin by thanking all of our witnesses for being here with us today. And thank you for the great testimony and for being here to answer our questions. My first questions are going to go to Ms. Palmater. Thank you very much for your very passionate testimony. I can see how much this issue is one that you care deeply about. And a lot of the statistics and facts that you mentioned were very shocking to me, and it's great that we're learning about this, at least here. And I'd like to know and get a bit of your input on how we can make things better specifically. So in terms of what happens in Canada, that's obviously, like, you know, you mentioned the RCMP. I sat on the Public Safety Committee. I know that the RCMP needs to do better. Not even members in the RCMP are safe from the system itself. So I can only imagine communities like Indigenous communities that are often victimized, how much they might be at risk when they're at the hands of the RCMP. But why is it that you think that Canada has that Canada has the status that it has around the world in terms of human rights violations when it comes to resource development? And if you can, I guess I'll ask the second question as well. You mentioned a little bit about Canada having the possibility of implementing policies that would help us deal with that. Do you know of any countries around the world that do have stricter policies? Like, if the US is doing it better than us, what exactly do they have in place to protect Indigenous communities around the world? And if you know of any countries that are doing better, and what can we take from that?
Thank you so much for your questions. On the first one, if I understand it, it's relating to Canada's reputation worldwide, why it has that reputation. There's a very significant set of factors here that the large number of entities that are engaged in the extractive industry worldwide are known as transnational corporations. So corporations that are instituted here in Canada, but they also conduct work in other countries. When massive human rights violations, especially the killing of Indigenous peoples and the gang rapes of Indigenous people in other countries happens, when we try to bring Canada to account, Canada denies any ability to deal with it. They say, well, that crime happened in another country. We can't interfere with their sovereignty. And so they sit back and don't take responsibility for it, despite the fact that they're Canadian companies. And the Canadian companies basically say, we're in Canada, you can't touch us. And so it leaves primarily Indigenous women all around the world without too many options. We have human rights organizations that try to advocate on their behalf. Sometimes they might get settlements, but these settlements are almost always confidential. They're never published, so you don't have an accurate account of just how bad it is. All we know are by the individual evidence that we see on the ground. It's Canada's failure to actually step up and take responsibility for what Canadians and Canadian companies do around the world, that it is fearful. Other people in other contexts think Canada's great, but when I go to other countries and I meet with Indigenous women and they say, you're from Canada, they're like, you know, their companies are the worst, right? Like they commit the worst atrocities. That's not something that Canada should be proud of. And it reflects how they've failed to deal with Indigenous women here in Canada. In terms of what they could do, there's a plethora of things. So the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women came here and visited Canada, talked to Canadian officials and Indigenous women, and was shocked to hear about all of the violent sexual assaults by RCMP officers to Indigenous women and little girls, and called on Canada to have a specific review or inquiry into that. We asked the National Inquiry, we asked Canada to specifically include an investigation of RCMP and other officers in the extractive industry in the sexualized violence against Indigenous women and girls. And those two things were specifically left out of the terms of reference. So we have to stop putting economics as trumping human rights. And I think there's lots of things that we can do on a go-forward basis. One, no project happens until it can pass the bare minimum human rights standard that is now incorporated in UNDRIP. UNDRIP is the bare minimum human rights standard. That means any project that has the risk of sexualized violence for Indigenous women and girls does not go ahead unless there are guarantees of protections for these women in all of their forms: sexual exploitations, murders, disappearances, the use of their lands and resources, the failure to respect their rights. That Canada has financial levers. So even where Canada isn't the only authorizer of projects, it can say a condition of our approval on this, say, multi-provincial project is all of these guarantees that go to Indigenous women and girls to protect them. It could do that. It chooses not to. And the provinces are like the Wild West. They're literally a free-for-all. And so Canada literally has to step up and show leadership in this regard.
Thank you very much. Actually, there are a few things that you said in there that I think will definitely help us in terms of recommendations as well. So thank you for being more specific on that. Have you taken a look? I know you mentioned the UN, but are there any other countries that you would point to that are doing a better job, and what exactly are they doing? Have you looked into that at all, or?
My research is on what's happening in other countries in terms of violence in the extractive industry. So we know in the United States, it's just as bad as, if not worse. Same within Mexico. Anywhere where there's Canadian mining companies, that's what we've been tracking. We haven't looked at what other countries, I mean, there's just so many countries, and following what the UN is trying to tell Canada and other countries to do around protecting women here and around the world.
Thank you, Ms. Palmter.
Thank you,
Manuela. Next, we'll continue with Madame Larouche for 6 minutes. Andrin, 6 minutes, allez-y.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Ms. Berube here. I would like to thank all of the witnesses. I think that this study is very relevant, and it is about time that we talk about Indigenous women. My first question is for Ms. Etienne. There is still unacceptable violence in the context of resource exploitation, and it goes against the reconciliation that the government keeps saying that it supports. In 2019, there was a report that highlighted the issue, and the topic of our study has to do with 13.4 and 13.5 in the National Inquiry's report. This report contains many recommendations that the government is supposed to respond to. So, according to you, why does the issue of violence persist, even though these issues have been raised or were raised in 2015 with the National Inquiry?
Je vous répondrai.
I would say that yes, indeed, there were the recommendations from the National Inquiry in the different sections. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done to decrease violence against women, whether it be in economic development or other fields. And in my presentation, I said that Indigenous women and girls are doubly impacted in urban areas and in our own communities. And to respond to your question, I believe that for reconciliation, reconciliation is the end goal, and there needs to be a start. We can see things in Canada, and all of these issues in Canada impact women. We need to have increased oversight on the implementation of that plan. And when I say plan, I mean the national inquiry, because there's a series of actions and recommendations. And we'll need to find a way to have an implementation plan in the medium and long term and the short term to achieve these goals. So with regards to women and resource exploitation, we know that generally it is men that are centered in that exploitation, but we need to find ways for women to be present even in those fields. And furthermore, we also need to implicate women in climate change. There needs to be Indigenous women that participate in these topics. I don't know if I've responded to your question, at least overall, because we need to raise awareness of these issues for women. We also need to recognize ancestral rights, but there's also the matter of reparations. And it's important to the process of reconciliation. You talked about the national inquiry. Do you believe that there have been any improvements for implementing the calls to action 13.4 and 13.5? Answer: I would say that there are things being done, but it's not necessarily respecting what we're hoping to achieve. Things need to be done upstream before access to funding is granted. So we always need to work upstream to ensure that the plan and the recommendations and actions will respond to the national inquiry. I would say that currently there are things being done, yes. Are they meeting our expectations? Not necessarily, but we are following things closely. We want to be able to respond to the realities of Indigenous women and girls in Quebec. Thank you, Ms. Etienne. Do I still have any time left? I would have a question for Ms. Dorinado. Okay. Ms. Doré, you said that legislation could be implemented. Can you give us more information on that? So on the obsolescence, programmed obsolescence, for example, cell phones, they have a programmed life cycle that is much shorter than it could be. So all of that consumption means that there needs to be an increased exploitation of our resources and increases violence, as we've seen. So having legislation on this obsolescence would be important. It's been done in other countries, and it would be important to have in Canada as well.
Thank you, Ms. Naidu. Thank you, Madam Burby. Merci. Before going ahead with our next speaker, Ms. Palmater, there seems to be a slight problem with your sound. Can you unplug and replug your headset and then say a few words? So I can see that your sound is good.
Is that better?
Madam Clerk, can you answer that?
Yeah, could you just say a few words more, please? We can check with the
Sure. Hello, it's April 29th, 2022. I hope you can hear this okay. Is it working? Do I need to put it closer?
It does seem to be working, but there's a mic open in the... Can we turn off Ms. Gazan's mic, please? Sorry. Okay, Ms. Palmater, if you can just try again, please, and say a few words.
Oh, okay, sure. April 29th, 2022, hoping you can hear this okay. I can move the microphone. It shows all's working on my end.
It's okay. It didn't change anything much, but they're going to keep interpreting. There was just like a little staticky sound they could hear, but they're going to do their best. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you. Next, we will go to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here today for this very important study. My first questions are for Dr. Palmater. In the last Parliament, we passed Bill C-15, and now the government, of course, is required to ensure that all the laws are aligned with UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And as you mentioned, these are minimum human rights that any human being needs, Indigenous or not, to have joy. These aren't special rights. These are just rights that haven't been afforded to Indigenous peoples specifically. So my question is, how is the government's failure to uphold this new legislation by ensuring its implementation, including turning a blind eye to the violence that is being perpetrated against women and girls in Two-Spirit around resource extraction, further exacerbating this crisis and normalization of violence?
Thank you for the question. It's exceptionally important, and you've hit on all of the key points. We're now in an entirely different legal and policy field. UNDRIP is the bare minimum standard. And UNDRIP says there can be no violence against Indigenous women and girls, that special attention in everything Canada does has to be given to Indigenous women and girls, that they have the right to say yes or to no to things that happen to themselves, their bodies, and to their lands. They have a right to be a part of self-determination and to decide whether or not they want to protect their territories, their coastal seas, their waters, their resources, and to benefit from it. So this is the bare minimum. The other thing that UNDRIP does is it recognizes that Indigenous peoples have the right to enact their own laws and govern their own territories. So Indigenous women are at the forefront now of being decision makers. And so everything has to change, not just about Canadian federal laws, but also provincial laws, because all of these human rights obligations vest in the state, regardless of our constitutional makeup. It's no defense to say the province.
I ask that because, as we witness in real time, we see, for example, militarized RCMP involved in excessive violence against Indigenous women who are defending their lands and territories, unceded lands and territories, Wet'suwet'en territory, for example. I often use that example. Axe, chainsaw, and a guard dog ripping down a door, 2 women behind the door, totally unarmed. How does the involvement of state police within these resource extraction further implicate the federal government's failure, federal and provincial government's failure to ensure that Indigenous women are protected and their minimum human rights are also protected?
Again, you've raised a really important issue. So the RCMP not only failed to protect women from violence, Indigenous women and girls, they've failed miserably in investigating or even opening up files. We know that from the BC inquiry into missing women. We know this from the national inquiry. We know that internally they sexually assault and abuse their own female women officers. So they're not stepping up to protect Indigenous women and girls. And then on the other hand, they criminalize them, surveil them, physically assault them, and arrest and charge them for peacefully protecting their lands and waters, for peacefully protecting their own territories, and they're unarmed. They come in militarized. And the fact that they have authorized themselves to use lethal overwatch on unarmed Indigenous women and girls is something that the whole world has seen and has spoken out about. The UN, the Inter-American Commission. So Canada uses the RCMP and other police forces in different provinces as the enforcers of their genocidal policies. So extraction at all costs, land at all costs. And the RCMP does so willingly and sometimes independently of what governments have to say. And so they're a real loose cannon that we have to deal with. But again, it's not just them. Winnipeg Provincial Police are one of the worst police forces in the country. The OPP, the SQ, you name it, we have a huge problem, and they're all involved in some way in criminalizing, brutalizing, and assaulting Indigenous women and girls, especially in land defense situations.
Thank you very much. I asked that because there were certain calls to justice that were related specifically to policing. And I think the sad part of this story is the very systems that were supposed to be designed to protect us are also been part of the harm against Indigenous women and girls. You previously called the violence with resource development industries caused by man camps such as Muskrat Falls a modern day form of genocide. Could you please elaborate on that?
It's the general sense that men in these man camps or transient workers, RCMP officers, or anyone involved in this corporate industry assumes that Indigenous women and girls are going to be there for the taking. How do they know that? Why do human traffickers in those contexts target Indigenous women and girls? Because traditionally, no one's cared. There's very few, if any, successful prosecutions that come all the way to a successful prosecution. People in law enforcement who engage in the same kind of predatory acts are not going to follow up with other people doing the same thing because they're involved in it. I mean, that's the problem here. There's this assumption, which is a very old stereotype, that we are there to be exploited, and they can because they can get away with it.
Sorry, Ms. Palmer, that is your time. So sorry to interrupt that. And that is the end of our first round. Thank you, Ms. Gazan. And in our second round, we'll go to 5 minutes for CPC, 5 minutes for Liberal, and 2.5 minutes each of the Bloc and NDP. We'll start with Ms. Ferrari for 5 minutes. Michelle, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I would love to start with Ms. Quinn, if I may. And Ms. Quinn, thank you for the work that you're doing. One of the things I'd love to focus on is I'm a big believer in prevention, right? Raising men in a culture that have the right education and tools so they know things. And I still think there's a bit of a gap, and that's being gracious, I think. I think there's still a lot of a gap in terms of understanding the vulnerability of Indigenous women, murdered and missing Indigenous women. And I think a lot of people, if you haven't been exposed to it or know, what do you guys do in your center to educate? Do you have outreach programs into the community for education around this?
Thank you very much for that question. CEASE does a number of things, and then in relationship with others. So we actually offer what's called the Sex Trade Offender Program for men who have been arrested with attempting to buy sexual services, both street-based sexual services as well as online. And we take that opportunity to educate men about all of the aspects of our laws, but more importantly, the impact on women and girls. So we have Indigenous women and girls, not girls, but Indigenous women who participate in the education program, because we know that we have to build empathy, because when you care about another human being and hear their story, you will reflect and make changes in your behavior. So that is one thing we do. I consulted with the Bonnyville Native Friendship Center before appearing here, because they are a town in the midst of resource-based industries where there is also a lot of transiency. So they have just recently started a human trafficking community initiative, and they are doing awareness. And that's the biggest thing they said that they really need to concentrate on right now is awareness. They know they're ruffling feathers in the community because they're speaking out and they're putting things out boldly. Mm-hmm. In Edmonton, we've also done the same kind of really bold billboard campaigns and other things. More importantly, though, awareness is one part of it, but it's really engaging boys and men in looking at themselves and their attitudes towards girls and women and two-spirit persons, and beginning that shift at an early age and countering the negative stereotypes that that boys and men are raised with. We have some great male leaders in Edmonton who are bringing forward those conversations on how to be a healthy male, not a toxic male.
Yeah,
I'm very encouraged by the leadership of men in our community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Quinn, and nice to hear that you're targeting the men in the education aspect. And I loved build empathy, very, very valuable. So thank you very much for that. And it sounds like it's being a success. Can I get a yes or no that these programs are having success? Do you have any data yet to come out of them?
We have minimal data. It always takes money to study the long-term impact, but we do believe we see changes in the attitudes and behaviors of those who come to the program. One indicator too is sometimes we have men call us and say, I haven't been arrested, but can I come? I know I have a problem. So that's a good thing.
That's a big step. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to jump right over to, and I hope I don't say this incorrectly, Madame Etienne. Madame Etienne, is that right? Am I saying it right? I'm wondering if you have any stats on reduction in family violence with economic development. In my experience in speaking with different chiefs of Indigenous nations across the country, there is definitely a want for economic development. And I'm wondering if you have any stats around a reduction in family violence with economic development.
To
respond to your question, statistics between economic development and the economy, I'd have to say there's very little data on Indigenous women and girls linked to the economy and economic development. So we would need more funding in order to be able to study effectively such a theme, the link between Indigenous women and resource extraction, so that we could truly understand women's needs to have access, for example, to jobs, to have more training, to have more support. These are things that we need to have more knowledge of. The links between women, the economy, economic development, and exploitation. With Quebec, there are certain communities that work with resource exploitation companies, but that's not done willy-nilly. There are criteria for respecting Indigenous families.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ferrari. Next, we go to Ms. Shanahan for 5 minutes. Brenda, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I thank the witnesses also for being here today. This is a topic that have been a great concern to our government since we formed government in 2015, and we have been putting money, significant sums of money, into organizations that are working directly against gender-based violence and preventing gender-based violence. My question is for Ms. Quinn, because you did address earlier that you're doing education, and I agree with men and boys, it's very important to do so. For women and girls, we've also heard that women and girls who face abuse growing up have more difficulty recognizing abuse in other relationships. Can you expand on this, how this trauma makes Indigenous women and girls more vulnerable to sexual exploitation, and what strategies we can use to address this? And if you could comment, too, if you've seen the effects of the additional funding that this government has put into preventing gender-based violence.
Thanks. I'll do my best, and I would also defer to the Indigenous women on this panel. So there are a number of wonderful initiatives. We have the Institute for the Advancement of Aboriginal Women in Alberta, who engages women all the time, and also working with the young women. And I celebrate their work in the community. Again, there are programs called Girl Power that are, especially oriented towards Indigenous girls in First Nation and Métis communities, as well as, there's just different types of educational initiatives. I know that through WAGE, for example, that is where the Bonnyville Native Friendship Center receives some funding, and that they are working in their community. So I think we're seeing some changes. I know too, the Canadian Women's Foundation work has been really critical in Fort McMurray and other places. So I think there's some good news happening, that, but we still have to do the big work to counter the exploitation. And I think I would defer to Ms. Palmater, because things have to go into policy as well. That and enforcement. We can do all the great preventive education in our communities and in our own ways. At the same time, if we are not looking at the structural injustices that are there. So for example, I would encourage everyone to check out the recent statement from Enbridge Pipeline about human trafficking, and they have engaged an Indigenous woman to do the training of their workers and contractors in North America. That's the big change that we need to see that will support Indigenous girls and women. Thank you.
Very good. And I will ask Dr. Palmater to comment on that same question, and hopefully I'm going to have time to talk to Madame Etienne aussi. Dr. Palmater?
Thanks for the question. One thing that Canada is often celebrated for is it has a ton of laws, human rights laws, liberties, freedoms, and anytime it goes to the UN or the Inter-American Commission, it can make a giant list of tons of programs and initiatives and pilot projects and everything else. What happens is they haven't shown how that translates into women. Less violence against women, less foster care, less exploitation, less trafficking. In fact, if you look at the statistics over a 20-year period, it continues to increase. So Canada's really dropping the ball, sometimes because it's focusing in the wrong direction. We're looking at,
But if I could just break in there, have you seen the effects, though, of the additional funding that we have put in place? And because I'm a cost-benefit person by profession, and I just want to know, that are we putting money in the right places? No. Overall. Okay.
No, disproportionately, you put too much money into political organizations and not enough into the community-based grassroots groups that are actually doing the work on the ground, that are actually helping the homeless, that are actually helping the women in the downtown east side, that are actually advocating for women in prisons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madame Etienne, avez-vous...
Miss Etienne, do we have any time?
Of your time, Ms. Shanhan.
Okay.
Thank you, Brenda. Now we go to the block for 2.5 minutes. Madame Berby, you're the next.
Si j'ai le temps avec ma...
If I have enough time for Miss Etienne, here's my question. Can you talk to us about support services for women who are victims of violence? Because a lot of regions are rural, or far, can you talk to us about the needs of such communities? The needs are quite high. The communities in Quebec are fairly remote. For example, the Atikamekw Nation, which is quite isolated. So there needs to be more investments to have better care for health. And for other services as well. There are communities that are closer to cities, and their needs will be different because the environments are different. Some are remote. My community is closer to a city, so the needs are different. If I take an example of Miss Ishakwan, and there was an event in the past 2 years, there was systemic racism. So there's a lot of work to do in the province of Quebec and with the Quebec government in order to recognize that there is systemic racism in its institutions. So that would allow for culturally adapted services that would meet the needs of Indigenous women and children. Thank you. My next question is for Ms. Dorinado. It is also important through this study to find concrete solutions to this problem. Do you believe that the federal government should put in place measures and rules for resource exploitation companies in order to have a framework that these companies will have to follow specifically for harassment? Answer: yes, it is very important that measures be taken. Groups have made specific requests. As Ms. Palmater said, it's very difficult when there is violence in other countries that our Canadian companies are responsible for them. So there should be legislation in Canada on due diligence for the environment. Our companies should not be able to go exploit resources and murder people when there is resistance on their territory. It makes our country seem very negative.
Madam Burby, this is your time, and thank you, Madam Burby. For the final round, we'll go to the NDP for 2.5 minutes.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just fixing my earphone. It's caught up in my mask here. I'm so sorry. I'm just untangling it.
No problem. We'll give you 10 seconds extra.
Sorry about that. Madam Quinn, one of the focuses of your organization is income bridges to address exploitation. I put forward a bill for a guaranteed livable basic income, Bill C-223. Senator Kim Pate has put forward the same bill, exactly the same language on the Senate side, Bill S-233. Part of the reason I put forward that bill was in response to Call to Justice 4.5 of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls, because, as you indicated, there's a direct correlation between income security and increased risks of violence. Would you agree with me that a guaranteed livable basic income would assist women, girls, and Two-Spirit to be safer from violence?
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for putting that bill forward. We absolutely support that. During the pandemic, we got a little grant through some of the federal money, and we did a little pilot project where we added in dollars, $1,000 a month for all 6 months to 5 women, and we asked what difference did this make? These were all women who were in sexual exploitation, trying to make money through providing sex services. They all said A guaranteed annual livable income would mean they would not have to sell their bodies. I absolutely support this move. It would make a major difference for Indigenous women, girls, 2SL, LGBT people, for all people if we had this, and I commend you on that leadership.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I just often feel that Indigenous people are often or provided with false choice, right? Income or economic development, or being safe from violence and sexual exploitation is an example that we're studying here, and certainly in the inquiry that happened in Quebec. My question is for President Etienne. You know, Lac Simon, it was tragic seeing what came out of Lac Simon, especially with the involvement of the SQ. What safety measures have been put in place since that inquiry to ensure Indigenous women of that territory that also often haven't been given choice around resource extraction are safer? Or is it the same?
Very, very quickly, you have just 5 seconds.
Oui, Marjolaine Etienne.
Marjolaine Etienne had to leave, as she mentioned, so there are very few measures that were implemented. Very, very few. Maybe even no measures that were implemented, and it's very unfortunate because we were talking about reconciliation, but nothing's been done.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Gazan. This completes our second round. I want to thank our witnesses once again for their answers. And now the third round, each party will have 6 minutes, and we will start with the CPC Shelby Cramp-Nyman. He have 6 minutes.
How's that? We're good? Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks to all of the witnesses for all of your time and your expertise and your opinions. I'd certainly like to start by suggesting and acknowledging and stressing that unequivocally the unacceptability of any of the violations that so many of these individuals are enduring. It's not okay. That being said, I would like to just make reference to what Ms. Palmatier, is it Palmatier or a Palmater? Palmater. Earlier you referenced something particularly in your report, and she's absolutely correct on the statistic of the report stating that Canadian mining companies are 3 times more likely than other countries to engage in violations. But it's important for me to clarify 2 points from that particular report. So allow me to read it into the record. The report, Corporate Social Responsibility, Movement and Footprints of Canadian Mining and Exploration Firms in the Developing World, done by the Canadian Centre for the Study of Resource Conflict, states, under its results and analysis section, that it is important to note that only information on incidents that have attracted significant public attention are captured in this report. Countries where media or civil society groups are negatively controlled by the state or industry will necessarily have less transparency and accountability. As a result, those countries will appear to have limited violations. Secondly, the report also states, considering Canada does have over 76% of the world's mining and exploration company headquarters, it follows that there should be a proportionate concentration of CSR violations. So I just wanted to point that out for the committee. Moving forward, I'd like to ask a question. I had intended on asking Madam Etienne, so perhaps I'll ask either yourself, Ms. Siros, or Ms. Quinn, if you'd prefer to answer. And the question is more directed to that of progress, because earlier there's been a lot of conversation about what, there's reports done, there's studies done, but what are we doing to move forward? There was the federal pathway that was brought forward with the intention to support systematic change and to address all of the tragedies. So my specific question to either one of you is, based on your experiences, could either of you speak about the potential effectiveness and or ineffectiveness of the federal pathway program? Go ahead, Ms. Quinn.
I would defer to Ms. Sira if she would like to speak first.
Perfect, thank you.
Oui, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. It's very interesting that we are talking about the plan that was presented last June. It was something that was presented in 2021. The national inquiry was done in 2019. So 2 years later, a plan was presented that still hasn't really been implemented. We haven't seen much change. For Indigenous Native women Quebec, we are eager to see these changes, but we are quite concerned about whether or not there will be any changes, because nothing has proved to us to this day that there has been changes in the field. It is said that a lot of funds have been invested, but these issues still continue to impact Indigenous women. So we can't really see any change. So that's what I can say for systemic change. We're hoping for great things, but we're not seeing big results.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Quinn?
I apologize, I'm not familiar with the Pathways report, but I would speak to a couple of things. I'm very proud of our city of Edmonton, who have developed, an Indigenous framework and have been steadily working over that. On April the 6th, there was a renewed commitment, specifically listening to the voices of Indigenous women around what more we need to do in Edmonton as a city. I don't work for the city, but as a city to, decrease the murders and missing women and improve and lift up the contributions to our community. Also, our Alberta government has made a strong commitment over the last number of years to the Family Information Liaison Unit to support families of murdered and missing women throughout the province, and to again make renewed commitments through building in Indigenous advisory committees every step of the way. I also am privileged to support the work of the Indigenous Advisory Monitoring Committee for the Socioeconomic Subcommittee of the Trans Mountain Pipeline Expansion. And as I sit and listen into the meetings, I see, heavy engagement of communities along that pipeline route, shaping what is happening, identifying the gaps in resources such as shelters or the need for training. So I see those positive developments around me.
Perfect. So, and I guess another question. Oh, I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn. Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
Next, we go to Ms. Kayabagha for another 6 minutes. Go ahead, Ariel.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank the witnesses for being here and for sharing the information that they've shared with us. I wanted to go to Mrs. Palmater. What is your expertise on what is the necessary steps that would be that you have identified or ones that have been shared with you that you see would reduce the risk for Indigenous women who live near the resource extraction sites?
Thank you so much for your question. It's something that we talk about internationally when we compare, and also at the UN and Inter-American Commission, but also amongst women on the ground. And I think one of the biggest things is for action to actually be taken on all of the ongoing violence and exploitation. I mean, it's one of those things that happens right in plain sight. So, you've got human trafficking happening at truck stops near the man camps. You've got it happening just outside the man camps, sometimes inside the man camps. And everybody knows about it. Police know about it. The managers know about it. And so that doesn't ever get addressed. So there seems to be this barrier to want to address this for Indigenous women and girls. And the other thing is to look at what hasn't worked. There's been a million recommendations that say, oh, they just need cultural awareness training, or they just need gender sensitivity training. The problem has never been our culture. The problem is violent sexual crimes, violent human trafficking crimes. It's how do you have zero tolerance for these violent criminal acts that are happening either in the RCMP and as corporate actors, state actors, private actors, and that there's no follow-up, no investigation, no real prosecutions. They all do it with relative impunity. And so I think we really need to look at anything where you can check a box, a community initiative, a donation to a powwow, all of those things should be happening anyway as partnerships, but it's the failure to address the ongoing, right out in the open violence that's happening that seems to elude everybody. They want to kind of pick around the edges and not really address the problem.
So budget 2021 did allocate about $540.3 million over the course of 5 years, which began between 2021 and 2022, and $126.8 million ongoing to support Indigenous communities currently served under the First Nations policing program, and also to expand the program to the new Indigenous communities. What do you think have been some of the takeaways for communities who are served by the First Nation policing program? Or what have you heard from that program?
Some of the key concerns are around lack of jurisdiction, lack of recognition of First Nation laws, whether they be laws created under the Indian Act, like bylaws, for example, or their own traditional laws, lack of jurisdiction to deal with the predominantly non-Native predators that engage in these acts of violence. So generally jurisdiction tends to be limited to the reserve boundaries, or if at best band members, but the vast number of people that engage in acts of human trafficking, exploitation, murders and disappearances of Indigenous women statistically are non-Native people. So it's the same kind of problem that the tribes have in the US, where they have court systems, they have laws, they have police officers, but their jurisdiction is limited to on reserve, and we know the majority of the violence happens off reserve by these man camps. So that's going to be an ongoing problem. I'm glad they're providing more money to First Nations to have their own, policing or safety officers or whatever alternatives they want. But it's the lack of recognition of our laws and jurisdiction that prevent dealing with the majority of the offenders, including the RCMP or people in the military. How can we go against them when they have their own insulated processes?
Thank you for sharing your comments, Ms. Palmer. Madame Nadeau, récemment, Concert Action.
Recently, Concert Action Femmes Estrie organized a roundtable to talk about resource exploitation and Indigenous women. And do you believe that we can have things implemented in Canada? What we got as recommendations: there was a mining company in Peru, and they attacked activists. And we mentioned that when there are mining projects, there should be a consultation with the local populations. There was a lot of violent repression that happened in Argentina. There are currently 14 activists that have been imprisoned because they were opposed to the mining development. So that is why we believe there should be a policy so that the ombudsperson has the resources necessary to sanction Canadian companies for causing harm abroad. There are, in some cases, people who are blinded and paralyzed. This violence is completely unacceptable. We also want our Canadian companies to have a larger responsibility with regards to what they can and can't do for human rights internationally.
Merci, si je peux.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Naidu.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ariel. Next, we'll continue with Madame Larouche. Andrian, 6 minutes, Alice.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses for their presentations that I listened to before having to speak in the House on intimate partner violence. I would like to quickly come back. Miss Etienne has left, so perhaps Miss Sirois-Gauthier will be able to respond. In her presentation, Miss Etienne talked about the United Nations Declaration and how recognizing Indigenous rights, if it had been done, what would be the impacts of that, and what are the impacts of not signing that charter yet? Answer. When Ms. Etienne talked about the United Nations, she was talking about 13.4 and 13.5 in the National Inquiry, which states that the well-being of Indigenous women and girls needs to be taken into account in the extraction of resources, which is not done or not sufficiently done. Indigenous women are allowed to be consulted as provided in the Canadian Charter and in the United Nations Charter. I'm with Ms. Etienne in New York, and we're talking about free and informed consent, and we are seeing that this is not something that is done, and we are seeing the impacts of this. And the impacts are that there are still exploitation projects, and our organization is not against projects if it can be beneficial for the community and people around the community. However, often these projects do not respect human rights and the health and safety of Indigenous women. So, unfortunately, women continue to experience violence in all its forms, and their resources and their communities are being extracted without them being able to do anything, and this is very heavy, and this adds to the experiences of colonization and residential schools. So these are all things that we continue to see in forestry and mining. So the cycle of violence never ends, and we see violence in all of its forms. So these are multifaceted consequences, and they're not taken into account and not sufficiently assessed. Thank you very much. So I also heard that you are not necessarily against all of these projects, but that there should be an improved dialogue between nations and companies. My next question is for Ms. Doré Nadeau. My colleague from Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte attempted to table a bill in the House with Canadian mines to have a better idea of their impact abroad. But unfortunately, the motion was defeated at the House. Earlier, you talked about this matter, and my colleague Sylvie asked questions on it, but I would like to come back to it. When we're talking about companies exploiting resources abroad, we don't have as much information. And is there any information on Quebec? Internationally, we can see that there is still a lot of corruption. There are police services like we have here that will continue to perpetuate violence against women, and any kind of opposition from the Indigenous people to mining companies is not taken into account. When a mining company comes into an Indigenous territory, they should be consulted, and the development should be done harmoniously, and that is not what is currently being done. It's a great shortcoming from Canada. there should be a more significant legislation for companies, because it's becoming a bit of a paradise for mining companies because there is so little legislation, and Canada needs to act on that regard. Also, we've talked a lot about changes, sustainable development, going green, and it requires the exploitation of rare elements, and this needs to be well examined. And when we talk about climate change, we also need to examine how we will develop the earth and examine progress and examine the consumption that is destroying the land. So we need to protect the lands of Indigenous populations. Thank you. Yes, because resource exploitation has an impact on the environment and on all of us at some point or another. And I think I'm out of time.
Thank you, Madam LaRouche. Next, we go to Madam Leah Gazan for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. I know that, some of the committee has talked about the pathway plan. I've actually put forward an order paper question to see what funds have actually gotten out the door from the 2021 allotment, because it seems to me that the government is not responding with the urgency that this current situation demands. And I know that one of the committee members talked about return on investment, and I'm arguing that the money hasn't yet been invested, and in fact, $0 have been invested in the new budget to deal with the crisis of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. And this isn't just a concern for me, but AFN, NWAC, National Family Survivor Circles have also noted inadequate investment and actually put forward numbers with no avail. It's certainly a crisis, and the voices of Indigenous women seem to constantly be disregarded. I know, Madame Souris-Gauthier, you spoke about the failure to achieve or receive free, prior, and informed consent from Indigenous women around resource extraction. And I'm wondering why, just in your opinion, why do you think there is such a fear to actually get free, prior, and informed consent from Indigenous women and girls who seem to be at the front lines of the most acts of violence? Where is this fear coming from?
Oui, si je peux.
If I can reformulate your question to make sure that I understand. So the reason why Indigenous women are not taken into account, correct?
Like, why are we in an extraction project? Why is there a consistent failure to receive the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous women?
Okay, merci, je comprends.
Thank you. I understand better now. I had an issue with my computer. So, as we stated earlier, in the past few years, more Indigenous women are a part of the extraction industry. They are a minority, but these are predominantly male industries. So for the few women that do go into these jobs, they, unfortunately, and not all of them, but a lot of them, will experience violence and abuse, as stated in the study in the Inuit Women Association's report. So these women will have witnessed an extreme trauma and will be pushed to not report their aggressor. And that could be a deterrent for other women who want to get into this field. So I will be asking a question to answer your question. How can we consult women if women are not present in that job market? How can we consult women if women are afraid to be consulted because they have barriers to overcome? how can we reach these women who are marginalized in their own communities and are marginalized in urban communities? I think that my questions also answer your question. It is very difficult for Indigenous women to not be afraid of institutions that want to ask them questions. I think it is very intimidating. So that is what I would respond to your question.
Thank you so much. My question is for Madame Doré Nadeau. I know that your organization works to mitigate violence against Indigenous women. Can you discuss that a little bit and also describe any interactions you've had with the effects of the extraction industry in your efforts to mitigate violence and assist with fighting against violence against Indigenous women and communities? Sorry.
Oui, c'est beaucoup.
It's through participating in the Women's March organization, and through this, we were able to develop relationships with Indigenous organizations throughout the world, Indigenous women organizations throughout the world. And we ask questions as a society. What things do we prioritize? What systems? Because earlier I heard, yes, it is important to raise awareness, but there are measures that need to be implemented to transform our society, for example, with legislation. And earlier, Ms. Sirois-Gauthier mentioned that when women go to work in those fields, that is something that we requested, that women should be allowed to work in a mine, and we realized that there was violence in those situations. So there should be policies that need to be implemented, like we have policies for physical and psychological harassment. We want these policies to be implemented, and we want women to have a recourse when they make a complaint, and they need to be informed of the different possibilities that are available to them. In Quebec, we have the Commission on Health and Safety, and it's also a matter of acceptability in the case of new developments. But we also have to examine, for example, the fact that we didn't sign the declaration recognizing the rights of Indigenous people on their territories. So all of this lack of recognition of Indigenous people and the abuses that are perpetrated, there needs to be a better communication and participation.
Thank you, Ms. Gazan. And this is the end of our third round. In our fourth round, we'll go with the 5 minutes to CPC, 5 minutes to the Liberals, and 2.5 minutes each of the Bloc and NDP. We will start with Ms. Ferrari for 5 minutes. Michelle, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I am actually going to pass my time to my colleague, Ms. Kramp-Nyman.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. So this has been another moving hour and a half. I always find these committees quite, I don't know, kind of heart-wrenching. Like, you hear all these sorts of different stories, and I'll be quite honest, this is not something that I was raised around. I didn't talk a lot about it at school. It wasn't talked a lot about in my home as a young adult. So how do we engage and encourage and educate more people that are not hearing about this every day? I have the beauty and the ability to be on this committee today, but not enough people are talking about this, I don't think. So we're talking, and I applaud each and every one of you for all of your efforts, because communication is healthy, and being here today is huge. And I know that so many of you are doing so much on the ground. But with anything, very, very seldom is there a carte blanche approach to anything. So there's a lot of different intricacies. So my question, I'll pose my first question to Ms. Palmater. So in what ways are there different distinct groups of Indigenous women and girls, and how do they have different needs from one another? Because I don't anticipate that it's one carte blanche need.
Well, thank you for the question. Obviously, there's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, but in particular, amongst First Nations, we're nation-based. So Mi'kmaq, Mohawk, Wet'suwet'en, all of those. So we have different histories, different experiences, but
so with that, how do we like, what's the different plan? Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, so I mean, on a national level, it should be a crime to sexually violate Indigenous women, whether you're First Nation, Métis, or Inuit. So there's a certain amount of things that the federal government can and should be doing that really isn't about distinctions, but how different nations want to go forward in terms of, it could be policing, whether or not they want to approve projects. That's up to those areas. So some might want to go on a nation base. The Mi'kmaq might want to say, you need to deal with us as a nation, but other areas like Treaty 4 might say, no, deal with us on a treaty area basis.
So if we continue to pour more money and more money and more money, if the government does that without a specific plan in place, like, are the plans working? So the money has been distributed at different times in different budgets, different studies have been made. So what needs to be done differently? Because clearly it's not working because things are still happening. So what needs to be done differently?
Two things. One, the gross underfunding of all of these programs and services. It looks like a lot of money, but then when you look at the actual population and what it covers, it's grossly underfunded across all socioeconomic conditions. We know that through lots of litigation. And number two, it's also, not only do we have to increase that funding so it's not racially discriminatory, but we also have to put funding to where we're not putting funding, like actually supporting self-determination, the implementation of our laws, supporting Indigenous women to be decision makers, to be on every decision-making body that there is, and to be able to have alternatives to pipelines. It can't simply be here, it's a pipeline or you go to jail. There's got to be, well, maybe some Indigenous women want to engage in green tech, green energy, all of these other things. So it's about the paternalistic control of what our options are and not really giving us any control.
But is there a way that we can educate people with resource development? And is there clear, like, I know there's a lot of parallels that you were drawing earlier in the meeting, but are there actual stats to support that? We know it's happening in some regard, but how do we educate the resource development? We need pipelines. So how do we balance?
Well, we may or may not need pipelines in certain areas for certain purposes. So we can't always presume that the answer is yes. Otherwise, that violates the legal principle of free, prior, and informed consent. The most fundamental thing we need to do moving forward for Indigenous women and girls and for our Indigenous nations is respect the right to say yes, yes with conditions, no, not right now, I'll reconsider it later, or absolute no. Until we get there, we won't ever stop the violence that is associated with forcing those things to happen where they shouldn't be happening. And to accept that.
Do you see a link between resource development and that of economic reconciliation?
Oh, most definitely, because all of the social research shows that in First Nations that have no suicide or lower rates of domestic violence, for example, are those that aren't focused on economic development at all costs. They're focused on self-determination, language revitalization, cultural restoration, all of those things, land defense, the ones that instill pride in who they are. And in many cases, you see some of the bands that are some of the richest have some of the worst socioeconomic conditions because money, economic development in and of itself doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
So do you see a link between poverty and violence?
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you, Ms. Van Nieman. Next we go to Ms. Lamberpos to 5 minutes. Emanuela, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll continue my round of questions from earlier. And I guess My first question is going to go to Madame Etienne, who is now Madame Sirois-Gauthier. Vous avez parlé ou
Miss Etienne talked about the fact that Indigenous women need to be consulted before, during, and after projects happening in their region. And I think this addresses all of the witnesses because you all touched upon this. How can the government and these big companies that come to exploit resources, how should they consult? What should the approach be? And can you give us more details on how this should be done? I will start with Ms. Sirois-Gauthier, but if any of the other witnesses have comments afterwards, you will be able to. Thank you for the question. So there needs to be consultation before, during, and after, and it's important. If, for example, there's a plan for a development project, we consult Indigenous women with free, prior, and informed consent. We consult them. We ensure that everything meets their values for a project development and that it's culturally adapted. And during, when a project is put in place, it doesn't mean that things are going to go as we expected. In all development projects, there are always modifications that need to be made because things happen. So there needs to be a follow-up of what happens during the project. What is happening? How are things going? Are we respecting our initial commitments? And with regards to the after, once the project is done, it needs to be reassessed to see if the commitments were respected. For example, we could put in place a project, everything is golden, everything is happening as expected, but once everything happens, well, there's violence against women and respecting the environment, all of those provisions aren't respected. So Indigenous populations, experts, organizations, and communities need to be present in the project from the beginning to the end, because in violating consent, well, they're consulting but not consulting. They say that they have consulted to get that check mark, but it's only symbolic. So that is what we are raising, and this is what is happening with projects all over the world, and it impacts Indigenous people, and it is very unfortunate that it is recognized in the Constitution, but there is no real implementation. Do any of the other witnesses have anything to add?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
You spoke to us about how in a lot of these communities there's displacement that occurs because of the projects, and there aren't enough buses. People get bused into cities, and over here is where a lot of the crimes happen. A lot of the victimization happens. And so there are a lot of issues in here that were touched on, right? Like the fact that hitchhiking is obviously not safe and that there aren't enough buses. What can you suggest to the committees? Because you described the situation well, but how can you suggest, what suggestions can you make that would limit the danger in this type of activity? Obviously, displacement shouldn't be happening, but if it occurs, in what ways can it become safer for these communities and for these women?
Thank you for that question. I have a couple of suggestions. One, that there could be investment in developing local transportation routes. Greyhound abandoned the West completely, and there's nothing. So I think some investment in local companies, local initiatives, maybe Indigenous companies running the buses, so that they create that safety that's built in. Another is, for example, in the big city, the role of the Native Friendship Centers, to create what we call new in town, going out and finding people who are at risk as they migrate into the cities. One of our organizations here, Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society, does that. They go actively looking for people who appear to be new so that they are not preyed upon by either gangs or drug dealers or sexual predators, and then linking them into community and healthy resources. I think the biggest challenge is around safe housing for Indigenous girls and women coming into both towns as well as a big city like Edmonton. And we really need to be attentive to that. Edmonton does not have an Indigenous women's shelter. Calgary does.
Thank you, Ms. Curran.
Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Curran. Thank you, Manuela. Next, we go to our block, 2.5 minutes. Madame Larouche, floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses again for the work that they do on a daily basis for women and girls. It is truly remarkable. My question, and I would like to end on a more positive note. So, Ms. Dorinado, we have denounced things that are happening abroad, but for companies, have you heard about companies that have measures to limit the negative impacts of their exploitations on women and girls? Do you have any positive examples that you can share? And how were these measures effective? Answer. Thank you for the question. I was hearing myself, sorry. So, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for these questions. We talked a lot about the need for research, and I think it would be very interesting to document the matter of companies that are exemplary and that could have an impact on legislation that we would like to develop here in Canada. Thank you. So I understand that we need to look for those positive cases to inspire us. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I would like to end with Ms. Sirois-Gauthier, since Ms. Quinn responded on friendship centers. Can you talk to us about the importance of these friendship centers with regards to our study in order to support Indigenous women? Answer. For Native Women of Quebec, Inc., and friendship centers, they are very similar worlds. So what women go through in urban areas and in remote areas is very different. So in urban areas, women will not be aware of resources, so friendship centers can refer them to available services. But friendship centers, even if they do remarkable work, the amount of people who live in urban centers is quite significant for Indigenous women, so it is difficult to respond to the needs of women because there isn't necessarily enough funding, and
Merci, Madame Larouche.
Thank you, Madame Larouche.
Ms. Gazan. Ms.
Yes,
Gazan, go ahead.
First, I just want to thank all the panelists for your powerful testimony, and also the committee for listening and learning with such open hearts and minds. It really means a lot to me, and I know it's really touched my heart. I know that we've talked a lot about poverty, and one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard was from an elder and a residential school warrior who said, "The greatest poverty one can ever experience is poverty of the spirit." And Madame Doré Nadeau, starting with you, what are some support services that can be established by community-led organizations that are trauma-informed services that are also trauma-informed services to ensure that individuals can be protected from harm.
Oui, donc je crois que les...
I believe that services need to be created by Indigenous people and Indigenous women because they know the needs. So if these services do not yet exist, they need to be developed. And if they do exist, then they need to have the means to respond to demand. We also talked about the importance of having consultation when mining companies are setting up, and Indigenous women need to be a part of the consultations. Thank you.
Dr. Perlmutter, if you could respond to the same question, please.
And it was in regards to the things that are working.
What are some support services that can be established by community-led organizations to protect women, girls, Two-Spirit from harm?
I think in addition to all of the organizations, whether they be Native housing organizations, friendship centers, women's organizations, and all of that, that there also needs to be funding to support First Nations-led programs who want to help their band members who live off reserve to have supports, whether they're at home on reserve or off the reserve. And also to not forget about all of the grassroots people who are not part of organizations, but who they themselves are spending all of their time and energy walking the streets, helping women, providing services, and they're not formally recognized, but could use all of that financial support to help these women and to have a place to transitional housing, transition out of prison, all of these other things, and protection from police and man camps and things like that.
Thank you, Dr. Perlmutter, and thank you, Leah. And that is the end of our time. Thank you so much to all our witnesses for joining our panel today. On behalf of all of us, thank you for the work you do in the community and your important testimonies. And to our members, for our next meeting on Tuesday, we are scheduled to hear from Alan Gabriel, an Indigenous land defender from Quebec, and Hilda Anderson Pierce, chair of the National Family and Survivor Circle. Is it the will of the committee to adjourn? Thank you all. Today's meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.